Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Afternoon, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to have Sarah Deutchman, and she'll be making a presentation on using Corpora to teach vocabulary. So, everyone, please welcome her with a round of applause.
Okay. Yay, me. All right, so I'm going to get started because I want to make sure we have time to go over the worksheet. If you have questions, actually, you can ask as we go along. If there, you can put them in the chat or just say something directly, or if I miss something. And yeah, as Herb said, the meeting is being recorded, so if you don't want to be on camera, I'm not a room host anymore. Okay. All right, I will give my presentation. Um, So, as I said, we're going to be talking about using Corpora to teach vocabulary. So, it's important to touch on exactly what Corpora are. And you should be able to see my slides, right? Okay. So, quickly, we're going to go over what Corpora are, some studies, who they work for. We're going to talk a bit about word profilers. So, if you want to adjust your materials to make sure they're suitable for your class. Talk about the worksheets I created and how you can do it yourself. And mostly, I want the audience to have a turn to try doing a bit of corpus analysis themselves so they can see what it's like. Okay, so first, what are corpora? It's largely just a big amount of naturally occurring examples of language. And the importance is that it's naturally occurring, right? And it's possible to create a corpus of anything, to be honest. You could create a Harry Potter corpus, there's a coronavirus corpus, there's one that's updated pretty much all the time, the Now corpus. So anything you want. And there's a lot of electronic corpora that are free and easily searchable. So you can look for word usage, etc. The problem with corpora, sort of the problem, is that corpora can't analyze themselves. You need to teach your students how to do it if you're using these. Okay, so how can you use them? You can use them to correctly check collocations. So what word pairs go together? Like drink, take medicine. So take medicine would be in English, but in Japanese it would be a kutsuri o nonde. So they use drink medicine. So it would be able to help them clarify which verb to use, which was with which noun. You can check for connotations. Is this a positive word? Is it a more negative word? You can check grammatical patterns, self explanatory. You could see where and when it's used. So is this used in academic writing? Would it be used in a blog, a TV show, movie, whatever? You could also have students try to guess the meaning of a new vocabulary word. So by looking at different sentences using the word in the sentence. Right? And also, you can use it to create specific word lists for ESP. Okay, so some studies talking about Corpora's tools, some important findings. So Cobb 1997, they use computer game activities with concordances, so sentences. And then they had another group do definition based activities, and they found that concordance learning showed less decay over time versus definition based learners. So, when given a post test after some time, they were able to see that there was retention. Bolton also found out that learning styles don't matter with corpora. So, if they're a visual learner, audio, or etc., that doesn't matter. Any learners can use them. They just found a slight difference with visual learners being a bit more receptive. Bolton also found lower level students did better with corpora than with standard dictionary definitions. So he also did a study again, giving students concordance lines versus just definition based. So they were able to remember the words better. And I guess this might have been because of being able to experience and interact with the material, not just looking at the definition, being like, ah, that's what it means. Okay, because, memory fades over time. And for Cobb and Bolton, they did a meta analysis going over these studies using Corpora. And mostly they found that it does help L2 learners' receptive and productive skills, with especially collocations and idioms. Most of the studies so far have been on collocations as well. Okay. Another tool you can use as well that's based on Corpora, they're word profilers. So you can just pretty much input text and you can see the word level, especially with the analyze text function on englishcorpora.org. You just pop it in, and it will show you like the frequency level of each word and highlight them. And you can choose what words you want to use based on your students' ability levels, where they are in the frequency. There's also a vocab profiler. Also, I learned about vocab kitchen in the last presentation I was in with Eric Altman, which can also do things based on CFR levels. So there are quite a few out there that you can use to put your own material in and see how difficult it is for students. Okay. And as for creating ESP lists, there are different ways to do it. The one I'm most familiar with is using englishcorpora.org, where you can just use the search function. You type in what you want, and you save your list, and then you can kind of weed out the samples. And it's a bit hard to see, but you get sentences. And you can also see where things would be used, if it would be used in like a blog. You can also be able to see when it was used. So if you want to look at trends, like if you don't want to give your students vocabulary that's useless now, I mean, not useless now, but useless because it's not used anymore. Okay, so you can also do it that way. How am I for time? Okay, so some considerations you need to think about when you're designing your worksheet is one, is it what you want to give the learners a chance to do is to test their hypothesis based on the expectations of what they think the word means, what goes with the word, when would it be used. So getting them thinking and engaging with the material is quite important. Also, think about the benefits that they could have over a long-term study, but you do need to provide some scaffolding. You can't just give them a link to a corpus and say, here, go. You need to explain what they need to do. I use photos, which you'll be seeing later, to show how to do the searches, etc., and explaining it. Also, when you're creating the worksheets, the most important thing is what's your purpose? What do you want the students to gain out of this? Right. Okay. How I created the worksheets, I used Sketch Engine language learning. The reason is the concordance lines are simpler than Coca. Coca can sometimes use a lot more technical things. So uh, Skell is better for beginners, I guess. It's a simpler interface, which you'll be experiencing. So it's easier to use. You don't need to remember how to do all sorts of searches, limiting things, etc. And the login is not required. So if you're having trouble with students, technology skills, you don't have to worry about Skell. They just go in and that's it. And it's free. And also, as I said, providing screenshots when you're creating these worksheets is important because it shows them exactly what to do. And also, you need to think about the needs of the course. Um, what I did with some of the sheets I used before was I did it based on my experience. Because I've been teaching academic writing and discussion over at Waseda for 3 years. And we teach the course like 1 quarter would be the first part, then 1 quarter is the second part, which is more advanced. So it's a semester, so it's run 2 times a year. So every time I keep seeing the same mistakes with students' essays. So I wanted to create this material so that students would hopefully stop making these mistakes or become a bit more aware of them. Okay, so as I said, I wasn't going to talk for too long. Mostly what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you into groups, depending on how many people we have. Yeah, and I'll also pop into the group. We don't have that many. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to put a link in the chat because I think it will be easier. instead of sending the file. Whoop, wrong one. Here we are. So here's a link, and I'll show you what you'll see when you go to the link and what I want you to do. So you're going to go to the Sketch Engine for Language Learning, and just please follow the examples. The thing that you need to do, it's highlighted, and you're going to be answering questions in your group. I know some of you are, well, I think all of you are natives, so you'll probably know the answers even before. But just to kind of give you an idea, just follow the instructions. For number 5, it's not a word that I would use for my students typically, but I wanted to try to figure out a word that some of you wouldn't know. So you can try to use the idea. So just follow the instructions carefully and you'll be able to do that. So 9, 8. I'm not really in it. So maybe 2 rooms would be fine, I guess. Yeah. So I'm gonna put you in your rooms, and I think about 15 minutes or so. I'll pop in and out if anyone has any questions or something. Okay. So if you could go to your breakout rooms and start.
We thought it was a negative meaning,
Yeah.
but then when we looked at the meaning, when we teased and we looked at the meaning, I'm thinking, well, is it so negative? It seemed to have a negative feel to it.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I'll explain it as well as the answers. I'll go back to sharing my presentation. And like, of course, you ask the students, what did you find out? So number 1, you could see that it is, which collocation is more likely to be used, is it positive or damage? So you could say that it would be a negative word. So cause damage would be most likely because it's the first one. But you could see, like, it's never anything good. Cause problems, death, loss, injury, disease, pain, controversy, or, well, change could be okay. I mean, it depends. So you can give students the sense that this word is usually going to be used for negative. So this kind of activity can be used to check collocations. And it's the object of cause because you need, well, what is affected by the cause. So it's important to know the grammar when you're creating these searches. Um, Next one, which is correct, clear or refresh. You could see number 11 was clear your mind. So this gives students a chance to discover the moment of it's not refresh my mind. And the reason I chose this example is because my students always write, I wanted to refresh my mind. And I'm like, no, I wanted to clear my mind. But if I say it, it's going to take me saying it many, many, many times for it to, integrate into their mental lexicon, I guess. So if I say, if I let them do this, it gives them a chance to interact with it more. So hopefully they will be able to retain the meaning a bit more. What's another word for influence? I mean, what's another word for effect? And this is pretty important to make sure that you take the picture so they know to look for the verb, because there's also the noun version. And you could see influence comes up. So this type of activity would be good to ask students for synonyms. So because I teach academic writing, they need to paraphrase, which is near impossible with a limited vocabulary. So this is a kind of way to bypass the substantial amount of vocabulary they need to be able to paraphrase well. Because they're going to need to, synthesize a lot of academic text. Right. For the next one, would it be be versus become? It would be become. And I chose a sentence. I chose this example because students always use be when they should be using become instead. So they can see examples of when become would be used, and they would be able to search the word sketch as well to see what collocations would be connected to it. So this thing, but it's necessary to do the searches by yourself before. And I'll explain the process in a bit. And for number 5, everyone's favorite, what do you think Axarious means? It means having or showing excessive fondness for one's wife.
Mm.
And the reason I chose this one is because I wanted to pick a word that most people who are native speakers wouldn't know. So you can have the experience of what it's like to do this blind. So Scala is best for beginners. For higher frequency word, EnglishCorpora.org would be better to give the lower frequency words. Um, but the concordance lines are a bit harder to understand on English Corpora. And English Corpora is a bit more, it takes a bit more training for students, for people not used to using it. But it also does have an interface where you can go to like Reverso or Lingui and you can see the Japanese. Right. But sometimes the translations on Reverso for sentences are not very good either. All right. So just kind of quick explanation of how I created these. First, it was a needs analysis. I noticed what my students needed for this essay. So you could give like a type of sheet like this with necessary collocations based on the mistakes you know your students are making or what they need to pass a test or something. And I would do this when I gave them the assignment sheet for the type of essay that they need to learn. I mean, they need to write. Um, the searches all need to be done ahead of time by the person creating these materials. So you need to figure out which concordance lines would be best, as you saw for the examples of Axarious, and also to give very explicit instructions on what they need to do with explicit pictures because you want them to work individually. So taking screenshots is very important. That's part of the scaffolding as well. And yeah, make sure your instructions are very explicit on what they need to do exactly. Um, if your students are lower level, you can create multiple choice questions that you saw. Is it A or B? And if they're more advanced, you can let them do activity 5. Okay. This is my conclusion. Corpora can be useful for beginners. They allow learners to produce their own hypotheses on word usage, and it lets them test them out. So the more students are able to interact with the language and to think about how these words are connected, the better it is. Because if you tell them, "Oh, it's not touch culture," I say that all the time, but it doesn't really work. So using the corpora allows them to notice things and to think about it and to discuss it. And the more they interact with it, hopefully, the more retention there is. And it's a targeted focus of words to teach by frequency. So the examples are given by frequency. It's actually Scala is based off of Adam Kilgraff's language, and he was involved with the BNC Coca in the past. So yeah, here are some references, and that's my email. It's just my first name at Wasera, and then yeah, we got some time for questions.
Okay.
Cool. Stop
Thank
that.
you very much, Sarah. So, does anyone have any questions? I think we have about 12 minutes for questions.
Yay!
Yeah. How was the experience?
Yeah, how did you feel about Axarious?
It was very interesting, actually.
Uh,
We were like, as a group, we were guessing what does it mean, and we were discussing what it meant, and we were comparing one sentence to another.
oh, you're the good group,
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
except you cheated.
We only
Well,
cheated at the end.
well, I wanted you to have the experience of what it would be like for students, and also why it's important that the other words around it wouldn't be too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I really like how it connects words together. I think that's really important. And there's not nearly enough of strands of words, like phrases of words, being taught in the schools.
Yeah, and you need to know like this word is attached to this, and also that you can't just take the Japanese and put it
Yes.
like the collocation relationship into the English because it's always weird.
Mhm.
Like playing with your friends is weird. well, when you're an adult, playing with your boyfriend.
Mhm.
I don't need you to write that. Touching culture. What if culture doesn't want to be touched?
Mhm.
Stuff like that. So they don't understand it because this wasn't taught to them.
Mhm.
And I know as like learning Japanese, I always mess up. I can't often remember, is it shawa o hairu or is it shawa o aberu?
Mm.
What am I doing in the shower?
Because, I actually saw a TikTok about it and how to get dressed in Japanese. I
Mhm,
thought it was
Uh,
in in English you just say wear,
mhm.
wearing my socks, but in Japanese you have to kaburu, you have to hairu, you have,
mm.
and there's so many things. So I think it's the same in English. There are specific words for specific actions.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the students don't realize because they haven't been taught this before that you can't just take what's in your language and then imprint it on another one because it just doesn't.
Mm. Mm.
So
So
there's
an image that I use for this
Mhm.
kind of thing is because like translation method is like a needle and thread going through two different fabrics. Like
Mhm.
Mm.
one fabric is English and one fabric is Japanese, for example. And that's okay. You'll get a pinpoint part where it goes through, but you've got to acknowledge the fabric around each of the actual existing stitching around each of those in each of those fabrics. And one fabric might be a kind of silky fabric, and the other fabric might be more like sequins, and and just poking a hole through it is not really going to um, it won't hang together well. It won't move well together. So kind of like a lateral and a vertical sort of sense of what you're doing with the language. So I do like I'm always looking for collocations actually for when I'm
Mhm.
teaching new words.
Yeah,
Uh,
I like
so,
Still because it's a lot friendlier to use. But Coca Corpus or other ones, you can actually get a lot more information from them.
mhm,
But as I said, it depends what you're doing.
mm. Thanks for introducing that to us.
Yeah, no problem. If you want, I can show you Coca or EnglishCorpora.org.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
anyone want to see that?
Yeah, I
Yes.
would like
Yes.
to see that,
Oh,
please.
Okay.
sorry. Just before we go into that, I would be very
Mhm.
interested to know, in a practical sense, when you're running these worksheets in your classes. Obviously, we were discussing in English as native speakers. Students are discussing in Japanese, working out
It depends
together.
on their level. I'm not against having students speak Japanese in my class, especially because I realize what we're doing.
Hmm.
Because they have to do 3 essays in the first quarter, and then they have to do an essay and a research paper in the second quarter. And even though the students are higher level than normal, and I think most students are in the 0 to 1000 frequency range,
Mhm, mhm,
so pretty low level.
hmm.
Not mine. They're a bit higher than the average, I would say, for Japanese students.
Okay.
So I don't care if they're speaking in Japanese when they're
Hmm.
discussing, but when they're speaking to me and they're giving their answers, they have to use English.
Right. I see. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just what I would imagine the natural way it would work out. So
Hmm,
yeah, good to hear that's what you found in
yeah.
real life. Yeah.
And if their level's high enough, they'll do it in all English,
Oh,
obviously.
cool. Okay.
But if it's not, then it's a mix of going back and forth and trying to figure out.
Great. Thank you.
Do I have enough time to do this, or I mean, how do you go
We
for
have
it?
1 minute. So, or
Yeah,
as usual, like if we can't finish a discussion here in room 2, you can all move to the social room and
it's
we can.
lunch next, so I don't know how you are for time though. What you're doing?
Or can you send us the link through chat?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
As
Yeah,
I said, it takes a good amount of time. There's links to EnglishCorpora.org, and you can see the different ones. There's like Wikipedia corpus. There's a lot of corpuses. It's Mark Davies who's in charge of the site, and he's pretty good about being helpful, and there's videos as well, guided tours you can use, but it takes a bit more practice for yourself to do the research as well. That's why I wanted to use Skel, because last time I tried to use Coca in a presentation, it didn't work so well.
Okay, that's all
Yeah.
the time we have for today. Thank you very much, Sarah. So
Thank
we
you.
learned a lot today. Well, I'll be using this for my classes this coming semester. So thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you this afternoon for the other, if you're going to go to the other presentations. Everyone, please give Sarah a round of applause.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Yep.
Sarah.
I'll
Thank
go to the
you.
social room if anyone wants to talk to me for a bit. So
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Sarah.
oh, do I end the meeting now because I'm the host?
Oh, well, I'm stopping recording first.